Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Get Yours podcast. My name is Lisa Amelia Tretherick. I am the host. Very happy to be here with Adnan Yunus. Is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Perfect. I got it right. You are a creator and entrepreneur through and through. I loved the first meeting that we had together. The demo was just out of this world. The technology that you're creating is an answer to so many of the prayers of storytelling and game creation, and I'm so excited to go over more of that through this conversation. You are the CEO and technology scientist of Opus AI. It's a startup that provides artificial intelligence solutions, which really like literally turns text into video games. It's text to 3D. You're empowering a new generation of producers, writers, storytellers, and actors in a way that has really never been done before, and really making it easy for all of us to be involved in a different kind of storytelling, something visionary, and it's really, really amazing. You have a incredibly long career before Opus. I was so impressed to hear of all the things that you've done. Your LinkedIn is jammed with such important, positions such as chief software architect, development engineer at companies like Ericsson, technology officer, security researcher, CEO of Parsec Games, software engineer at GE with stints at NASA and Lockheed Martin. These are incredible positions. And of course, you are creating something so revolutionary. At Opus, this text to create platform that you have, it helps to control 3D environments, including things like lighting, camera, controls, terrain, grass, flora, houses, buildings, streets, humanoid characters, and animations. As a 3D animator and modeler myself, these are just outstanding ways to access this world and create something that is so much more than all of us ever envisioned. I never thought that technology would get here, and maybe that's just like my brain is just smaller. I've had a personal demo, and it is just insane. Like I said before, I am so excited to bring your tech to users within my other project, Where to World, where we can really provide more storytellers the ability to create worlds they want to see and share with the world. And you're just an incredible solution for us and for so many brands and companies and just innovations in games out there. Is there anything that I missed in that intro?
No, no, definitely. Like, I mean, um, that's a pretty accurate in most regards. I think like we try to, rather than think of us as a somebody who provides artificial intelligence solutions, we think of us as more like bringing the artificial intelligence, the power of technology that we have created and everybody else in the industry has created, because we stand on the shoulder of giants, to normal user, right? People who are not technologists, people who are not done anything. So I like to position it as that we're bringing the power of technology to our grandmothers and our mother-in-laws and our aunties and uncles, like people who generally would never have access to um, the ability to create video games or create movies, right? Because simply like they like it's a generation apart. So yeah.
That's and I loved when I didn't even think before we spoke that that was the story behind it, and I'm excited to have you tell more of that story. But being able to have anybody like your grandmother tell a story and be able to have things visualized in a new way is amazing, and be able to have everybody who is not a technological like novice to be able to come in and create something so visual that is really transcendent and can be healing as well in a lot of different ways, and just show points and explain and bring things to life, I think is beautiful. So here on this podcast, I kind of want to share a bit of the beginning to the end of who you are today. So we're going to start off with some questions about your childhood. And number one, I just want to start off like, what's your first memory?
What's my first memory? Oh boy, that's gonna be where. So when I was young, like we used to live on a farm in Pakistan. So that's where I'm originally from Pakistan. and that's literally what it is. And my first fondest memory is that, um, and that's like long time ago. Like, so I'm pretty old at this point. But I we saw, so we went to go to school, but in on the way, we saw these cranes, like parked um, on kind of a storm drainage, right? And they were cleaning up the drainage because it was like all mud and clogged. But that was the most fascinating thing that I have ever at that point seen in my life, right? So not school, not anything else, but just simply like technology in action, and that's kind of weird, but that's something that I can still recall. And I asked my father that, oh, can we ride in the crane? Can I operate it? And he laughed. And later, because I mean we were on farm, so he asked the operator, and we got in, and I was so fascinated with looking at all the levers and all the pulleys. So yeah, that's probably not the memory that most people have, but always attracted toward technology.
I love that. Thanks for thanks for sharing that. I always find it interesting to hear what somebody's first memory is, because I feel like it's something that is constantly kind of thought back at. It's like origination of self almost, and is really really interesting to hear from every single person.
Definitely,
I just wanted to
it's like the first block of, I guess, like your identity being built, right? So yeah, definitely.
yeah, exactly, that's exactly what it is. Is there clicking in the background where you are?
I'm sorry, I must be. So I'll try not to do it. Just
It's okay. It's okay. I just didn't want it to pick up in the podcast. I
is
appreciate
it
that.
better?
Amazing. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. And thank you so much for telling me about that first memory. It is awesome. So, can you tell me just a little bit more about your childhood and upbringing, and how you feel like it may have influenced your approach to business today and where you are?
So I'm from Pakistan. Like my mom was a novelist, right? She was a romantic novelist, and I think that has a lot of to do with where I am today. My father was an electrical engineer, so very different people in both, like the profession they've chosen, but also in terms of personality, in terms of the direction they're going in, um, and both sides influenced quite a bit. My mom always, so from an early age, she tried to um, convince us, or nudge us towards reading more books. Um, and she used to have a library, always, like whenever we moved, she always grab all her books, and they always stayed with us. So that was one of the things that always, I guess, like that has quite a bit of um, part in where I am today, as in that always loved books, always liked reading. When I ran out of books in her library, went out and started borrowing books, getting books from all sort of places. We weren't at that point very rich, or almost lower middle class, but um, anything that I would find, I would read literally, right? So that used to be an obsession at that point, that need to have a book at all times. And it has stayed with me for quite a bit, right? And I guess like that's part of where we are today, because I feel that the amount of knowledge that we have gathered as humans, uh, in terms of narrative, is insane. Like, it's staggeringly huge, versus the visual medium, and the interactive medium is almost like a speck. And I think that's where, that's the reason we started in the first place, because we felt, I felt personally, very strongly, that we are not getting where we need to be fast enough, right? The young people, the coming generation, they simply don't know. They simply think that we don't have any, we haven't and gathered any knowledge, and anything that they get is like almost like these trickles of knowledge, because somebody makes a video, or somebody makes talks about it. So yeah, really, she had a huge influence. On the other side, my father was a electrical engineer, so his influence was very different in that way. So he, from early age, around, I think I was 8 or 9, me and my brother, and like normal children, like we go out and play and all that. But then um, one day we snuck into his, like he had kind of like a small lab at home, and he had all these soldering irons and all these electronic components, and he kind of like he used to tinker away on technology there. And we snuck in, and we kind of like he was working on something, and he saw our interest, and like, okay, let me teach you how to solder, right? And I think that really changed the trajectory of where I am, because that almost made me feel bored with the typical children activity. Like that used to be like our favorite pastime, that you would sneak into his lab, grab a bunch of components or an existing circuit board, and try to tinker away. Try to make LED blinkers and these flashing lights. And at that point, like that used to be the pinnacle of technology. But yeah, and so that really convinced me. So he didn't have to, or nobody has to convince me that, okay, you're going to be an engineer when you. So I knew before, in middle school, what I wanted to be right then. That, okay, not that somebody would ask you that, like, okay, all this
Yeah.
profession, but I knew. So that had a huge part in where I got to.
I think that you like just answered so many of the questions that I had laid out in that single question. Like about your mom, the experiences that happened to you to help you get to where you are today. I think like, and I'm sure that probably you do too, just from hearing that story, that you are a culmin, like almost a perfect culmination of both. Like, look at what you're doing. You're this storyteller engineer, and you're bringing together those two things that you were so fond of, as a child, and it stayed with you for so long, and that is just amazing. And I love that. Are you still close with your parents?
My parents actually passed away, so they're not no longer with us. But in spirit, they're definitely, like I always feel that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, where I am, what why I feel strongly about a lot of things is almost like they're living part of me.
yeah. Do you feel like you're like you're carrying on this legacy that both of them had, in a way, like really like carrying on those parts of them, and have help like creating something that they would want to see in the world?
I would like to think so. That in some way I'm making them proud. One way or the other. I don't know whether they would probably be almost, um, I would say, elated with joy that where we're heading, and what kind of world that it's going to lead to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If I was a parent, I would be so proud of you. Like, you're such an innovator in changing the world. I'm proud to just know you in general and watch the journey that you and Opus are taking in furthering the advancement of this technology to the world, and what it is going to bring. It is going to change the world. It is going to create this access to our narratives, and creating things quicker and more efficiently, and creating experiences that we never thought that would be possible. Just, being somebody that doesn't know how to make something fully in Unity, myself, and going through all of these trainings and tutorials, and but still wanting to see something that maybe can go along with a book or a story that I'm telling. Or I can just imagine a parent coming in doing that and creating like a, experience for their child, and just all of these really interesting things are going to create such an emotional bond to so many people and experiences and stories. It's really, really beautiful. Have there been any specific childhood memories or experiences that have really like had a lasting impact on the tech that you're working on with Opus? Was it mostly just the storytelling from your mother? Like, what kind of, or is there anything from your childhood that you feel like really you wanted to focus on this storytelling aspect? Is there any stories that you've wanted to see, created maybe from your childhood and reenacted?
no, I would like to. So there are a lot of, so again, I'm a huge reader. And so one example would be like, in 2020 I read in a single year around 52 books, like, so literally like, day and night, like just reading books.
Yeah.
So I love the ability that every single person in their own way have to tell a story, right? And I've seen like, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm always thinking that, okay, this is a narrative, and they're telling a story whether they know it or not. And it's so diverse, it's so different with every single
Mhm.
person, like the way they build the kind of like the hype, the way they get you engaged, get you interested, and all that is very different, right? So I love every single thing. Of course, like, my first thing would be to take all these fascinating book that I have read. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. Take some of the books. Some of my favorite authors that I know are not that huge that they can ever make it to Hollywood. Maybe they will, like, in the next 20, 30 years, but not right now. And just copy and paste it and make that happen, and then go to them and say, okay, here is something that you can give to your fans. So um,
Yeah.
my mom, like, her books I still, like, keep in digital format. So likely I'm gonna do it. I mean, she wrote in a different language, but we'll get there as well. So definitely want to put her stuff in there and turn that into, and probably, like, make it almost like a living memory of her. So um,
Nice.
I'm definitely not, there's so many, great piece of work, a great piece of writing that I do want to see. So yeah.
What kind of books do you like to read? Is it mostly just sci-fi books, or are there any, like, nonfiction?
I like
what's your flavor?
I like um, I would say complex stories, as in, let me put it this way. So I like something that involves a long, um, strong, story oriented, like, something that has depth to it, something that goes in more than just the obvious, right? Not just the shock and I would say joy on the surface, but rather exploring lives, exploring history, exploring what could have been, what might have become, kind of like quite a
Yeah.
bit of, like, complex stories. So I'm not a, like, light reader, of course. I'm a very involved in the story that I'm reading, and
Yeah.
I like to get uh, almost, something that makes me feel like that it's a different life that I lived at a different point. And I think we as, humans, like, especially writers, have done a great job at it in the past, and still are doing a great job. Only that their access is blocked, or access is, like, limited to what they can do, or how many people can um, experience it, right? And especially, like, I see in young people a lot, like, if you don't get into, like, at least fictions early in your life, later in the life is much harder. So you mostly into movies and games. So really want to bridge that gap, that where um, storytellers don't have to struggle, right? And we'll talk about it slightly more, but yeah.
I think that that's really a great kind of way to explain the books that you're into and how complex they are. And there are definitely so many books that I've read. I love fantasy and sci-fi, and I just, like, I have a great imagination, but I want to see it, through the storyteller's eyes too. Like, how is this really intended to be? What did this person really look like? And I think that even in that way, as this is combined, like, it helps be better, more intentional descriptors as well, to really put, like, a lot of description into what you're putting out there. So I think that that's really, really interesting, and I think that it'll go hand in hand as the world progresses and this becomes something that's more mainstream, and you're intentionally writing for such descriptive practices to be created in this 3D fashion utilizing text only. which is I didn't even think of until you started really talking about books that have already been created and copying and pasting this text into that and really having something come out where you have to, you don't have to go back and change a bunch of things. You've already described things at such length that it's just there. Like, wow, it's that's amazing. So, are there any, or can you remember any lessons that you learned as a child that have really like helped you to navigate challenges and achieve success in your industry or any of the industries that you worked in?
Then, um, I'll just talk about one particular thing that stuck with me throughout the years, right? And that was more related to action. The saying was something like that. If you don't like something, go and change it. Like, don't complain about it. And it was such a profound thing at a very early age that it changed a lot of things for me, right? That I wouldn't look at things the way that I look at. Like, similarly, like, the reason we started on this, we were like, okay, it's not happening, it's fine. Like, we'll go and do it, right? It's not something that we're gonna say, oh, it's not happening, or nobody's doing it, or all this technology. So that is almost in every single thing that we do. It's like an implied thing that, okay, if we don't see it, we're gonna go and do it. Uh, we're not going to sit around and complain about it. I think that's one of the things. One thing that I do want to slightly explore, because you said um about, so we're talking about narrative, right? One thing I always felt when you're reading a book, what you feel is almost like a, so you're in a different world. If you're in a good story, you're almost like diving into a different like depth of the ocean, and you see all these characters and all these like amazing things that may have happened, or like somebody has wrote about them centuries ago, maybe, right? And at the same time, and they're fascinating, and they're like almost like alive, right? But you're like almost like an observer at that point, right? And later in my time, when I got into video games, and like and then multiplayer, and then MMOs, and um, so reading book is a solitary experience. You are alone, right? But imagine that it doesn't have to be. Now, as the writer is writing, not only that they're writing, but more like other people are experiencing their journey as they are doing it in real time. But multiple people can, as it is happening, you're diving into the same world together, experiencing it, talking about it, making it a collaborative, immersive experience. And that's a brand new thing that I don't think that anybody has even envisioned what it's gonna feel like. I can almost feel it, like that it's gonna be crazy, because so one of my favorite writer is Brandon Sanderson, a great writer. I loved his series he did on Stormlight Archive, right? Really fascinating, like the world he built, the magic system he built, the kind of characters he brought to life, and all that, right? And but at the same time, when you're reading it, you're like okay, I'm in this and I'm really loving the characters, but there's nobody to talk about it, right? If I do want to talk about it, I have to pop out, maybe find a forum on the internet and see if people are talking about the same thing that they are. But imagine that you're not doing that. You're actually in a time of a story, and other people are in with you, right? Almost like observers in that world, or maybe even active participant. So really, that's something that we baked in, and we really are excited to create that experience for people, for writers, but also for their fans.
Yeah, I love, and we'll get into that more of how Opus works and what you can do with it and what you've baked in. And I love the aspect of being able to be a looker in, and even as people are creating, and even watch this process, because I think that that's, especially in Web3, we have that thing called utility. Like, watch the creator, of this book create this, this world, and see it through their eyes, the creation of this through, whether maybe they're It's the creation of a new book that the book hasn't been released, but they're seeing this world, and then they go read the book, and they can, vice versa, see, oh my god, I remember this. That's what that looked like, and have this like really in like soul binding experience with this. Because sometimes we have to wait 30, 40, 50, 100 years or more to like or not even see something come to fruition, that is a favorite series of ours, and this really like makes it easy to create those experiences quicker and to bring that joy, at a really large, scale. So my last question about your childhood is, what advice would you give young you today if you could? Any advice, whether it's like be kinder to yourself or focus on this or don't worry about that. What is one thing that you feel like you would say, hey, little Adnan, this, that, or the other thing? Like, what do you feel like that might be?
Be kinder to yourself, I guess. Like, but
Yeah.
also that, good job. So
Nice. I love that.
yeah, I mean, I think as young people, we're often not as kind to ourselves. We're not as appreciative of ourselves. So I think definitely we need to be more appreciative, but also like definitely keep pushing.
Yeah, and don't let naysayers get in your way. I love what you said, before about, creating, how people say, like, be the person you want to see in the world. You're creating what you want to see in the world, and what hasn't existed yet. And I think that that is a great way to look at life, and a great way to be. That these thoughts and, ideas are valuable, and if you stick with them and create, there's something that is beautiful that can come, about from it. Especially being the first, like, isn't that one of the most important things in tech and creation, is being that first, that everybody remembers and then judges everything else that comes after on, which you're definitely doing in the space. And if nobody on here is, or if anybody isn't following you on LinkedIn, please follow you in Opus. I love the things that you guys share, and I love so much being shared about other people having demos and things that they're seeing and how impressed they are. It's really amazing, and we're about to get into that. So, taking from childhood, tell me a little bit about your education and, where you went to school, where you were before Opus. I know that you worked at NASA, General Electric, and more. How did you get to that high level of efficient work and in those positions? I know that there must be a interesting story or two there.
Um, oh boy. So I mean, like, it was almost instinctive, right? I went into electrical engineering, loved, wanted to become somebody who makes things, right? And by make thing at that point, computers were not that big, and they were like more like, eventually they're going to happen, but it took us by surprise in most cases, right? How quickly the entire thing changed. So I went into electrical engineering in Pakistan. Did graduated in that, and then by an accident, I knew somebody, and they knew somebody who was doing something in Pakistan. And in Pakistan at that point, it was not a common thing, right? Definitely that they were doing working for a company called Accelerated Technology that later got acquired by Mentor Graphics. It's just a different company, um, which all became part of Siemens later. So the work they were doing was something that was very close to my heart, because that was the kind of work that you would almost like dream of doing, right? Working on operating system for at that point we used to call it embedded software, embedded engineering, but basically it's the devices that we see all around us, but nobody actually
Mhm.
thinks about that they actually have an electronic component, right? So it's for vehicles, for satellites, for all sort of devices, right? And they were creating infrastructure around it at that point. So got was taken it instantaneously, and they were looking for people at that point. So started working there right away, and that led us to a project that we were working on. Later we found out that was actually for an operating system that is working for Hubble telescope. So at that point, Hubble telescope was still going through upgrades and changes, and we were working on it, right? We didn't know what it was, and as we kept on working later, we got contacted by okay, this is a contractor at NASA, and they have some question. We're like, okay, oh, sure, and this is that operating system I'm working on. So at that point, young, very so we were like completely, because you kind of idolize these things, right? You're like, oh my god, all these fancy
Yeah.
pictures, and you're suddenly like, oh my god, I'm working on that, crazy, right? And then um
It's me.
it was pretty almost like um awe-inspiring at that point, right? That it's not just that you're kind of a silent observer, but more like you're taking part in a revolution that is going on, right? And then later, and that's like the earlier days of, I guess, your multi-core operating systems, and that same operating system actually later got used in your F-16 fighter jet. And we had some part in it, right? So we added some support. I wouldn't say too much, but definitely some of the software that F-16 fighter jets now run, you know, we had some part in it. So yeah,
Mm,
and from there on, to work there for quite a bit, and then later uh, moved to Canada, and they started working with another startup, and they were doing something at that point again, I guess um, things are tracked, right? So they were working on a kind of a device that they didn't know what exactly to call it, right? So at that point, there was no category for it, no industry for it. It's simply that, okay, this is going to be something that is going to be part of your home operating system, right? And at that point, it was crazy to think about that home operating system. What does that even mean, right? Now we call it
yeah.
smart devices, or these Nest thermostats and all that. At that point, that
Yeah.
they didn't even know what category it was. So we worked on quite a bit on that. At that point, they were doing a trial with PNG in California to put it in every home, to monitor
Right.
the energy usage, and make sure that blackouts don't happen, etc., etc. And then from there on, I moved to started working with General Electric. They were doing something in smart grid platforms, and these are basically, if you drive by and you see a lot of these poles and all these pointy little looking thing, the grid stations. Um, Underneath it, typically there's an operating system running that manages where the electricity is coming from, where it is going, and where it's being stored. So it's pretty complicated, pretty sophisticated operating system that manages our entire grid infrastructure. And they have a modular system that you can plug in depending on what kind of utility you are and what kind of so started working on that, worked quite a bit there, and then from there on, moved on to another company, Flextronics, worked there on something similar, embedded devices and operating systems for um, smart meters, which is your electrical usage meters. Moved to Ericsson at that point. Actually, from there I went to another startup, and that startup was working in the same space they were working on, um, in figuring out the security, and that's like early days of cybersecurity, right? So they were working on making sure that smart grids, this entire industry basically that you see, the infrastructure industry, from smart grids to your utilities to everything, runs on a particular system called SCADA, and that SCADA system is very old. It's almost ancient at this point, and it has a lot of components that are not. When they were building it, they didn't think of internet, right? Because the internet was not there at that point. They are private. But anyway, that startup was trying to figure out how to, in the age of internet, secure it so they can connect to the internet and utilize all the new infrastructure. So worked there for a bit, then went and started working for General Electric, not General Electric, sorry, Ericsson. and Ericsson at that point was working on again infrastructure for your. So that's the time when 4G was being rolled out in North America. So they were working on um, a platform that would enable your Verizon, your AT&T, your T-Mobile to build that
Wow.
infrastructure for 4G, right? If it sounds like kind of like a jump jobs a lot, I get bored. So I get bored a lot
Yeah,
with the work I'm doing, and eventually I'm like, okay,
I'm bored. I've done what I've come to do.
yeah. So I'm, it's like my job here is done. Okay, I need to find something new to do.
Yeah.
So I get bored. Um, so not because of anything else. So yeah. Anyway, worked there for a bit, and then after that we moved to Bay Area, um, and started working for another startup. And that startup was doing something in the semiconductor realm, and that was um, pretty revolutionary, and they're doing pretty well at this point. But if you don't know what semiconductor field is slow moving. It moves very very slow compared to pretty much the rest of tech industry. As in that a chip that you are using in your mobile phone or in your laptop today was designed almost 5 to 6 years ago, often even longer, right? And the reason for that is that it takes a long time to test, to go through multiple iterations of the same chip,
Yeah.
and then eventually make it stable enough and good enough from the software development kits to other testing cycle. So anyway, and we were like, pretty fed up with this entire thing, 5 to 6 year cycle. We were like, okay, we're going to do it in 2 weeks to 2 months maximum, right? We're not going to spend any
Mm,
more time.
nice.
So at that point, it was crazy. But then Xilinx funded that startup, and I started working there, and then it got funded by later. We got picked up for a DARPA program, which was so DARPA was thinking that this is going to happen in the next 10 years or so, but we were already doing it. So we partnered with Raytheon, which is a big defense contractor, and they were like, "Oh, great! Why don't you take in this thing that we're doing to accelerate the development of semiconductor at a rapid pace?" And we're like, "Great, awesome." And yeah, and then after that uh, they're doing pretty well at this point, like they're funded by DoD and DARPA, and
Wow.
still going strong. But then I got bored, and I was like, okay, now it's now or never. So we're going to start something in something that rings very close to my heart, because till that point, I was pretty convinced that somebody's gonna come and do exactly what we're doing, like exactly Opus,
Mhm.
right? That you write stuff and things happen. But um, it looked like that, it's not happening. Like it's not gonna happen for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna complain about it. I'm gonna go and do it, right? And that's exactly what we started with. That okay, we're gonna do it. And when we started, it was crazy. Like it's not gonna happen. Like because in academia and everybody was like, oh, this is not gonna happen. For there's nothing there. And we're like, okay, we're gonna go and do it, whether anybody likes it or not. And
Yeah. That's right.
yeah,
And here you are. What were some of the biggest challenges when you started Opus? Like maybe your first year, what were some big things that maybe roadblocks that you had to overcome that are memorable and you're proud of?
I think the biggest thing that for us was talent. Talent is has always been a
Yeah.
complicated a puzzle to solve, and it still is. And of course, to get to talent, you have to talk to a lot of people, convince a lot of people, and
Yeah.
understand how people view what you're doing, right? So for us, like for me personally, like if you're doing it, if I hear somebody say, because when I was working and somebody would come to me and say, oh, we're doing this, I'll be like, okay, here's all my saving, go and do it, right? But as it turned out, that it's not quite as simple, in especially when you're building a business. There are a lot of things that you need to solve. There are a lot of product related things that you need to figure out before you get there, right? So we started with um, just this idea that okay, we're gonna revolutionize um, not specifically game design, but generally 3D design, and we're gonna make it narrative driven. But to turn it into a business, talent is one of the biggest things that we have to go through, and still something that we have to actively work on.
Yeah.
getting our story right, really something that makes sense to people. I think that's always a big thing, and you don't realize it because everything makes sense in your head. But when
Yeah.
you talk to other people, often it doesn't. So it took quite a few iterations before we got to where we are, where when we say something like it makes sense to people. And of course, figuring out the market, the strategy, how to get from where we are to
Yeah.
where we want to be. Right, we want to be a generalized, narrative-driven uh, design tool for 3D, 4D future of internet. But that's a very big goal, like almost like an impossible goal if you think about it. But what is the first problem that we can solve that would give people tremendous amount of value? Figuring that piece out, that took quite a bit of effort, quite a bit of pivoting, and but we're pretty happy, right? At this point, it's almost like instinctive, right? If somebody asks a question or somebody has a, we almost know that okay, this is the answer to this question, right? Yeah.
How, speaking about your team, because that is definitely hard to hire for, I'm sure, and to have the amount of work done that you need done. What are the kind of people that are on your team? Are they mostly coders and 3D animators? And how do you like? What kind of is your hiring process? Do you have like a multi-level hiring process?
We have a quickly, I would say, find a lot of people, and try to optimize for aptitude and attitude, right? We look for people who are excited about the things that we're excited about. And if you're
Yeah,
excited about the things that we can always, one way or the other, orient them, teach them, and accelerate them. So we're not big on, let's say, hiring from big tech or people who are on high position. We're more like depending on. It doesn't matter where you are. You need to be excited about what we're excited about, which is basically revolutionizing, almost like the future of the design, right? And if you're not excited about that, then
yeah,
it's going to be hard. But if you are, then we hire across the board from regardless of whether you're a graphics designer to you're an engineer or you're a fresh graduate out of college. And we have seen tremendous success in hiring freshies. So some
nice,
of them have turned out to be really great people. And we have seen moderate amount of success in like hiring experienced people. We almost like that, and I'm not like writing it down that okay, we can't simply. It's just that it seems like that um,
the excitement
the
isn't
excitement
there.
almost dies down, right? If you're working at Google and you're working at Facebook or maybe some other big tech, it almost like you no
Yeah,
longer have that. You become almost like skeptic, right? You're like, oh
yeah,
no, I don't believe in that kind of thing. So
yeah.
um, yeah, but we're almost like we're looking for very specific people who are excited about changing something great, like they're really unhappy about how the way things are.
Nice. And I think that that's so true. There's so many like designers, like environment designers and rotoscopers and just animators and modelers in general that are just so hungry to be part of something new and exciting and amazing, especially out of the gate. I went to school for 3D animation simulation, and I was really excited to work for. I'm sure that you may have heard of them. They were a company called Digital Domain,
Hmm.
and they were really rivals against Pixar in like 2012. So they came to my hometown, Port St. Lucie, and they built this massive building, like massive. And a ton of people from California moved there. That's where a few of my teachers, like spouses, worked there. And then one day, like a year in, they when they went to work, they said, we are shutting down and moving everything to Dubai. And people were like stealing computers and like so pissed because they just spent all of this money in this bad market to move there. And I didn't really know what to do with my degree after that. And I kind of like got out of 3D animation because I was just like, man, this could like almost happen anywhere. And I could move to California and something shut down. And what am I going to do? And I think that because remote work was not the thing back then. Like you had to be there in person. And I think that especially as a newbie coming into Web3 or coming into tech these days, especially creatively, there's so many more opportunities to work with amazing companies like yours, without taking that like severe amount of risk of uprooting your entire life. And how things have changed, I think that that is just amazing, and the opportunities that you're providing, because it's truly a really exciting environment. And just in general, the entire space is very like AR and VR and XR, MR, 3D driven, this metaverse driven, and there's so much more to do for people in fields like that, which is really amazing. And I'm sure you're going to be just creating so many more opportunities for these young bucks coming out, so excited to be part of something that is changing the world, and having their own narrative like seen in real life, in a really beautiful way. How do you approach, because I know that you were guys just you and I think that you did you just finish your seed round? Are you finishing up your seed round right now?
We're still finishing up. Yes.
How do you approach building relationships in the space? I'm sure that you have your hand in, in every aspect, being the top dog at your brand, and have your hand in marketing and outreach. And I mean, you take on, I'm sure it looks like a lot of the meetings, and making sure that people really know who you are and believe in your brand and what you're doing and your expertise. Like, how do you go about building those personal relationships?
Um, Complicated question. I think so. I didn't used to be a people person at all, right? So I'm an engineer, and I wanted to stay backstage and somebody else to take the meeting. But as it turns
Yeah,
out that not everybody's as excited about things that you're doing than you are, right? So for
yeah,
us, for me personally, it's simply that if you're excited about it, I'm going to talk to you regardless of what you're doing. It's simply um, um, it's something that it almost gives you energy to know that okay, there are other people who are excited about what you're doing, right? Um,
yeah,
and that's how it is, right? Still, uh, switch between working, like coding, building infrastructure, and then going to a meeting, and then just talking about completely like business related stuff or product related stuff. Um, um, Still, I wouldn't say that I'm like have become an expert at it. It's still something that I actively work on, actively try to improve, and figure out what works and what doesn't work. And I'm hoping that I'm getting better at it. Not sure if that's the case, but what is really exciting to see is that when we do something, post a demo or post a video, and it instantly like people pick it up and run with it, and like they're excited about it.
yeah,
That is something that I think that works really. Um, First of all, we find the kind of people that we want to, because they are excited about what you're doing in the first place, right?
yeah,
It's not that you're going to an investor or going to a person and trying to convince them. We don't want to become an educational provider, or we don't want to become somebody who's saying that, oh, there is. We want to be more like a brand which is, I would say, almost obsessively loved by the people who are using it, right? And we're hoping that there are a lot of people. Actually, we're not hoping at this point. We know that there are a lot of people who are just as passionate about making um, turning storytelling into an almost like a non-technical work. Um, so and that's where we want to stay, right? Almost like really not just push technology on people who don't want it, but more like push it on people
yeah.
who love uh, the non-technological aspect of it, that will be
Yeah.
able to do something completely brand new. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. uh,
No, you are. Yeah, you are, and I think that me with this follow-up question, do you feel like the relationships that you're building and the people that are sharing, like, do you feel like that is your marketing strategy?
Absolutely.
Like, not putting the, I mean, that's what Web3 is all about. The moment we see an ad that's targeted to us, we're like, you guys suck, and I'm going to unfollow you because you're using analytics against me, and doing what Web2 has just historically done, without, like, my knowledge or permission, or in this tiny, like, little written, welcome to Twitter or whatever. This can happen and that can happen. Do you feel like the best marketing is you sharing demos and having people, sharing screen recordings, and then people take off with it because they're seeing this new and amazing technology? And I mean, I see it shared by a ton of valid people with tons of followers, and like really valid, um, uh, people that provide a lot of education and just knowledge in the space.
Absolutely. And that's where we want to stay. Like, you brought up a very good
Yeah.
point. We don't want to be somebody who's advertising. So we're, um, and that goes with the, philosophy why we started in the first place, right? We want to empower human. We don't want to sell technology, right? And empowerment,
Yeah.
first of all, needs to be something about, for us, it's about being true to our mission. That you if you're gonna use it, then you need to love every aspect of it. And if you're not gonna use it, then it's fine. Like, we're not gonna push it on you. We're not gonna show up in your feed. We're not gonna try to convince you into. And I believe that it's gonna change for a lot of people who at this point, because a lot of times we see a disbelief almost, right? That we're trying to, what we're saying or what we're doing is not going to happen for a very long time, or what we're doing is going to take away jobs, or what we're doing is going to go against something, some personal belief that somebody has. I don't think that. I think that for majority of humans, for majority of the human race, the future is pure creativity, right? Where you're creating things, whether you're, regardless of what profession you choose, technical, semi-technical, or free-form storytelling, you are going to
Hmm.
be a creative person, because creativity is something that you can't automate, right? And which means that we're in a pretty good place, because we're building the infrastructure for that future of creativity, where everybody can almost build a narrative-driven, um, I would say, future in whatever profession you're. So from architecture to, I would say, industrial design, but definitely game design, storytelling, all that. Now, um, at this point, if you're not convinced, it's fine, right? We're gonna be like, okay, great. We're gonna stick with people
Yeah.
who are obsessed with what we're doing, because we're obsessed with what
Yeah.
we're doing, and we want to keep that energy. We want to empower those people, and then later maybe, like, but maybe one of your friend is gonna go to you, and maybe they're gonna convince you, right? We're not gonna go and
Yeah.
um, try to do it, because we don't believe in advertisement. We believe in we believe in our mission, and we want our users who believe in our mission as well.
Do you have a marketing team?
We do have a marketing team. That marketing team typically works on demos, works on
Nice.
organic growth. They work with that's like a simple, company philosophy, that we're not going to spend on advertisement dollars. That's just not. We're going
Yeah.
to spend more on um, something else, either
Yeah.
hiring people, or approaching people, or talking to people, getting on podcasts, getting, on a meeting. Right?
Yeah, I think that's great, and that's the way that the world's going, and that's great to hear, is that more personal connection, sharing these really cool experiences. Like, if you like, you're literally building it and they will come. Like, everybody is so excited that I see, just like, "Oh, I want a demo, I want to see something created." And I was really impressed with what you shared, and the reality and the quickness. I have just, after working in Maya, a decade ago, it is just so different. The render time and the ability to really create these fast experiences and change and rewrite, um, and it is just fascinating technology. So with something like that, it's like the light bulbs being created, and everybody's going to want to see it. Same with like how Chat GPT kind of like took over, or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion. Like, you at least want to test it out. You want to see it. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe it could help with my book writing and to envision this. Or maybe I can actually see something in action and provide it as an extra to my buyers. As a creative, there's a lot of really interesting things, and it's always the first that are coming out that are those ones that are even more trusted throughout this really, this quote unquote permissionless and trustless environment that we're moving to in Web3. And I wanted to ask you, do you have a proud moment, like this moment with Opus that you're like, damn, we did it, like what was it, like your first demo? Was it some piece of code that you put together and then like things just magically like worked the way that you've dreamed? What do you have, a singular proud moment that you're like, what, that you always hold on to and you kind of grade all of the other moments on?
Um, I think that so our proud moment, or my proud moment was when, like, our videos, like, start going viral, right? When people start downloading it without a permission, of course, which we had no problem with, just in case. But they started, like, just copy pasting, remixing, and approaching to us and say, "Oh, I posted this on TikTok, and I posted this on here, and I'm here, posting this." So that was literally like, okay, holy crap! Like, it's not. So we were hypothesizing that there are people who are gonna really want to use it, but now we know that there are immense amount of people, and not just the kind of people we thought initially are going to be excited about, but everyone, right? And that was kind of really, I guess, like, gave us that uh, extra energy, extra, that, oh, now
And
we can't stop. Now is like, it has to be done, right? Because still till that point, like, you have done a lot of stuff, and you have impressed a lot of people. A lot of people have, like, said wow, and you yourself feel that, okay, it's gonna be huge. But then at that point, it was like, okay, now you can't go back and, like, disappoint the people, because they are anticipating this to happen. So now we have to just refocus and make it happen. So yeah, that was like around, I think, 2.5 months ago when that happened,
nice.
and really changed. I would like more like streamlined our vision, where we're going, and we're like, okay,
Yeah.
now is the time.
That is amazing. I can imagine when you start seeing your stuff go viral and just shared by people you didn't even think would be interested or know would be interested, how cool that must be. And I see somebody, with massive followings on LinkedIn sharing at least once a week, and I get re excited about, utilizing the technology. And I'm sure that you're working like night and day. Do you have a personal life? How do you balance your personal life and actually enjoy the outside world a bit too?
Uh, no, but complicated question, right? So so that goes to my personal philosophy. I don't believe in personal life and work life on a very core. I think everything you're doing in your life has to be personal. You have to really care about what you're doing, and which means that it's almost like a personal, like, life, right? When you're working, it's still very personal to me. When you get a little bit of time, like, when we go out and eat, it's almost like it's hard to differentiate between these two things. For me, it's like the same word, because um, you become almost like the avatar of what you're passionate about. And um, I hope that we can bring this, like, ideology to more people, but I don't feel like, any, I would say, any desires whatsoever to have two separate lives. I feel that we as humans are a single, um, so we have a single identity. Like, of course, you can fragment your identity into multiple pieces and say, oh, this is my work life and this is my personal life. And I see this thing in some people where they're almost
Yeah.
like a different person when they're at work, and they're a different person when they are doing something else. Um, personally, I feel that that kind of reduces the complexity and the beauty of who we are as people. We we
Sure.
we we can be so much more with having by having a single um, integrated identity. So that's what I believed for a very long time, right? I'm a, of course, I'm a almost like a cognitive scientist, right? So that's part of my job to research how identity work, how human mind works, and where um, how machines can adopt this entire thing. And so far, everything that I have researched, the knowledge that I've gathered, leads me to believe that if you want to build a complex piece of machinery or a robot that can act or behave like a human and can have consciousness, it has to be fully
Hmm.
integrated in its functionality. And um, that brings me back to my point that as humans, we need to do the same thing if we want to be as good as that robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever take any, like, you time and, like, leave your phone off or go on a walk? Is there anything that you do that, helps bring you back to any kind of peace, or do you feel like your peace is your creation?
So my phone is mostly on silent. I don't use my phone that often. Unlike
Yeah.
um, so phone is not something that I actually use that much. Most of the time, I spend with talking to people who are around me, right? Who are working.
Nice.
So I prefer face-to-face engagement, talking to
Yeah.
people rather than looking at a screen or using an app. So that has never been a problem for me that much. Mostly, if I'm on my phone, it's gonna be when I'm reading a book or reading something like that is either required or for personal enjoyment. Now, taking personal time off, yes, definitely we do that. We try to explore as much as possible, um, keep an open taking trips or going out. But of course, at the back of your head is always like, okay, how does this fit into what you're doing, but where you're leading, but I believe that that actually gives you a better, almost like a more enjoyable experience of looking at things, because at
Mhm.
that point you're not just looking at things, you're actually seeing things for what they are. Where do they fit into, let's say, the future? Where did they come from? What is the history behind them? What were the people? So we went to Morocco, went to a lot of, almost took an entire trip of Morocco in December. And we didn't talk about work at all, right? So me and my wife, and which happens to be also my co-founder. But at any given time, we were looking at people and we're looking at how they are performing a task, how they are doing things, how they are thinking about the world they're in, right? And Morocco is like a kind of very mixed environment, right? Like, yeah, there are people who are, but they're super passionate about sports. They are and at that point, your World Cup, a soccer World Cup was going on, and there's a lot of things merchandise and items that they sell, and we're looking at this and we're like, okay, how does this fit into the world that we're building in the future? Like, let's say you're building, let's say, um, I don't know, you're tanning leather, right? How does that fit into that? Is there a part that will overlap with what we're doing? Um,
Mhm.
and uh, how will we be able to? And we didn't talk about it at that point, right? But it's almost gives you a very strong feeling towards what you're looking at. You're not just a tourist at that point. You're almost like a participant, right? Because you know that what you're doing is going to affect it. What you feel much more strongly about things that are being performed. You ask much more profound questions to people, right? Unlike that, the simpler question that you would ask. So, sorry, you were asking about my personal, timeout. So that's my personal timeout, right? Looking at other things that are not part of what we're doing, but
Yeah.
feel strongly that it will become part of what we're doing and it will have a strong impact. That's my personal timeout.
Nice, and very cool to, learn that your wife is also the co-founder. That is wonderful. What is the position? What is, like, her day-to-day?
She works more on the business side, so enterprise sale, enterprise partnerships, these kind of things. She's a very
Nice,
long history in that. Worked in quite a few big and small, but she likes to build stuff as well. Um,
nice.
and yeah, I mean, um, it's almost so for me. It's pretty cool to see that strong um, affiliation, almost, or strong attachment to something, because when you start building something and you know that it's going to be huge, but at the same time you know that it's not going to be easy to sell to people because they have never seen something like this. But then
Yeah,
seeing people being, changing, their how they see it, and how then other people reacting to it, and then everybody reacting to it, and then almost it's becoming like a phenomenon, right? At this point it's almost like a global phenomenon. If somebody sees it, they're like, oh my god. And that reinforces that belief in us as well, that what we're doing is huge. And
totally.
um, we're almost becoming one of those people who are always um, have a pretext of everything, that we're like, okay, how does this thing fit into what we're doing, right? Even we love cooking, we love baking stuff, and we're like, okay, how does that fit into what we're doing? Is this part of something that's going to change because of what we're doing? And
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah.
I think that's really interesting too, thinking about that in the sense of what you're doing. I'm sure you're just always, like, on like that, like, thinking about the revolutions that will come from what you're doing and how, oh, a new thought of what it could be. Which leads me to my next question. What do you feel like the future of Opus is? Where do you see it in the next 10 years? Like, what is your vision that you see right now? Because I know that it may change with different breakthroughs in technology that may come about between now and then. But where do you kind of see it in 10 years?
We see it as a generalized way for humans to interact with technologies. And
Mhm.
the reason I say so we're big on narrative, but we're big on narrative for a reason, because we know that narrative is a natural thing that all humans have. We grow up at a very early age, we instantly develop a ability um, to tell stories, right? If you talk to a 2 year old, they have a story to tell, and often that story is like fantastic, it's like crazy, it has all sort of weird things in it. And
Yeah.
um, often it takes us decades before we're able to effectively interact with technology in a in an effective way, right? You talked
Sure.
about 3D animation, or building games, or building, let's say, architecture and all that stuff. Takes a long time, 4 year of college, sometime 3-4 years of masters, and after that several years of experience before you're able to interact with technology. Now we are always practicing our narrative when we're talking to people, when we're talking to friends, we're talking to family, and at a very early age we believe that
Yeah.
it is going to become natural, right? And most of the technicality in professions are going to go away. I'm not saying that colleges are going to go away or training is going to go away, but that will shift more towards the core expertise, understanding the I would say the core knowledge of what these professions are about. How to
Mhm.
become a much more effective storyteller, or how to become a much more greater, architect, or how to become much better at, let's say, understanding how electricity works, these kind of core. And then everybody um, in our future is going to be a storyteller in one way or the other, whether you're building
Yeah.
circuits, or you're building spaceships, or you're building, let's say, transportation, or you're building stories. So we want to be a generalized interface which enable people to turn their narrative into designs of all sorts. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. Being able to turn narratives into a visual reality, I think is, the way of the future, especially since people can see that future now. Like, you're giving a visual aspect to things that haven't had that before, and especially if they're able to use it, in a VR sense too. I think that's, like, so much even more immersive, and we'll get into the technology that you're using in a second. I think I have 1 or 2 more questions about you, and one being, like, what is or what have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about leadership through your career to make you feel like you're a really good leader right now?
Um, oh, Complicated question. Let's see. So I think leadership is about a few things, but often it is about letting people fail. And it may sound like kind of like an oxymoron, but literally, if you don't let people fail,
Yeah,
they become almost incapable of success, right? So let's see. If you are always giving people something that they can succeed at, they're not going to try anything new. They're almost are terminally reluctant to try new things. But once they become
yeah,
they develop the habit of failing fast at things and trying new things, then they're not really afraid, right? Because they know how to fall, but they also know how to quickly get up and keep on doing what they're doing. And that was a hard thing
yeah,
for, especially for me to do, like, because of, I almost always instantly know how to do, the thing that they're failing at, how to do it well. But the lesson there was to not try to do it for them, to not inject my knowledge into their brain, rather
sure,
giving them the support, giving them um, the tools that they need, and giving them the guidance that they need, but then leaving them alone, right? Leaving them to fail,
yeah,
but also to succeed. But then at that point, they almost feel like a attachment to what they're doing. So that I
yeah,
think that's the lesson that every leader needs to know. Like, don't inject knowledge into people's brain, because everybody's head is different. Everybody thinks differently. Rather, be more like a support mechanism for them, to guide them to the solution in their own way, and let them take the ownership. Um,
nice. That brings me into my last question about you personally before we move into, more stuff about Opus specifically. How do you foster culture and innovation and creativity within your company? Is that one of the ways, like allowing failure to understand how to succeed?
yes, I mean, that's that's a key part of what we're doing. Of course, like, what we're doing itself, when you come into the organization the first day, it's almost like hits you, right? That, okay, I'm working on something. I'm almost working on history, right? I'm not like, reading or like, observing something. I'm an active participant of it. And I think that hits everybody differently. And sooner or later, like, you, one way or the other, you learn that, okay, whether you want to be part of history or you want to be an observer. Um, but um, the other way we also try to foster is giving people the high level vision and letting them figure out what are the things that needs to be done, right? Literally letting them um, take ownership of what we think needs to be done, but at the same time letting them figure out all the some small stuff that they need to do. So we're pretty flexible in that way. We want to people to take ownership of what they're doing, feel strongly about what they're doing, and
Mhm.
um, really surprise us with uh, how they feel or how they think about solving a problem, rather than taking some cookie cutter formula that we have and try to implement it. Um, and of course, we talk to people a lot. Like, we try to always um, um, show them our vision, but at the same time want to know what their vision about what they're doing is.
Yeah. I think that's great, letting having that, personal relationship, making sure people know that they've done a good job, allowing, them to grow in a variety of ways and really see their accomplishments and, maybe if they messed up, being able to fix something and understanding like it's all part of it. Like we're especially right now in such a build mode that there's bound to be mistakes and things that are incorrect and working together to create solutions and creating like a really conscious and kind environment to work where of course like you need to have a high level of efficacy of what you're doing and be efficient, but it's not the complete end of the day if there's a mistake here or there, as long as we take accountability and we fix it. And I think accountability is a really big part of just leadership and jobs and things like that. And I would you seem like an amazing like person to work with and work for, and I love the ethics that you have and your ethos and how you value other people and can see the best in them, and you're hiring a lot of green beans that are coming in. There's bound to be some things, but they're wanting to prove themselves and create something that's new and beautiful and be able to fail to succeed sometimes. And that's really important, especially with technology changing and like Unity and Maya and blender. Like there's so many aspects of every single little tiny thing that is just like code, and being able to be a professional in a really um, harmonious environment like you're creating is important, for other people to look at for leadership avenues, and that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.
So let's get into our last few questions about Opus. Can you tell us what are the costs associated with the platform thus far and what they will be, like what your kind of ideas are?
We So we were gonna put up almost like a pre-order page. I think that should be done within this week, and that by that time you're gonna know the cost and everything. So it's pretty close to, and it's gonna be pretty competitive. To I mean, competitive is a relative term, of course, because there's nothing else out there like this. But
Right.
I think here's the thing: we feel very strongly about it, and I think where we want to stay, which is to empower people, right? And
Yeah.
um, empowerment can done in a variety of ways. We want everybody to be able to um, use it in one way or the other. So there's going to be a different price point for different people, different kind of like, if you're a student, then there's going to be definitely some way that, and if you are higher up, and if you're doing something professional, then there's going to be a different price point. Right now, I won't be able to share any particular figures, and just I can just say that it's going to be very competitive, and it is going to be something that most people can afford, most people can use. So
Great.
very soon, I'm hoping this week or the next, we're gonna have that page live.
And when because I'll be sharing this on YouTube. When that link is up, I will share it in the description as well with the direct link there, so everybody that views it and listens to it can see that. So this is one of the questions that I had after the demo, which I would love at the end of this to like short like 5 or 6 minute demo, just a little quickie. Can people upload their own 3D elements for themselves to use in their environments or license it so other users can use it? Like, are there any IP contracts that people can choose from your platform to say, okay, I'm uploading this 3D model of, let's say, the Empire State Building. Anybody can use it for XYZ for their own personal, but if they're using it for business purposes or trying to make money from something or a game, then it's XYZ royalties, or they have to buy the model right out. Like how do you have that like functionality set up or plan to?
Um, and so you bring up pretty good points in that. So in creation market, of course, you everybody has a different point of view. Everybody wants to work in a different way, and everybody has their own how they want to license or share their work. Um, So the answer to this question is right now from off the bat, we're launching a tool in which you'll be able to upload your um, 3D assets, but other different kind of creation tools that you can build, AI or non-AI, and that's gonna be I think somewhere in September or so where you will be able to do it. You will be able to choose your own license, so there'll be multiple licenses to choose from, but also you can put in your custom license. The way we
Right.
imagine it working is that it can be a private library just for your own use, so you can upload it and
Hmm.
it's just going to be for your own use or your own
Sure.
team. Or alternatively, if you want to make it public, then you can choose a particular license um, for it, and that license can vary from okay, it's free for you, it's for all purposes, or it's free to use for your personal use, and then for commercial usage um, you have to pay something. Like
Yeah.
currently, the way we're structuring it is that if it's public, anybody can use it when they are building it. But if they want to
Yeah.
publish the creation, the game, in which case then you'll have to choose from the pricing point that the creator has set, right? Like almost like a Canva model where you can add everything to
Yeah.
your canvas, but then once you try to download it or publish it, then you get a bill of material.
Got it. Kind of like Shutterstock also, where if you want to download this version or that to be able to use this for, and when I like see it in my head, like, okay, I'm about to publish it, and then it has like, oh no, you can't go. You have to pay for this, and this that you have inside of your environment, which I think is, interesting. So they're like, oh shit, I forgot about that. Oh, I don't know, didn't know it was that much. Let me just pick and choose what I want. And I think that that's just a really other great environment for 3D animators and modelers to be able to have to sell their creations. Like this is going to really help a lot of people create these assets and provide them and have another stream of revenue, which they hadn't had before. In a lot of other marketplaces or may not have that visibility, or people just don't know where to look, which I think is really, really interesting. And for the downloads, I think that you had said that you have, forgive me if I'm incorrect, like you can download for VR and you can download entire scenes is it into Unity or vice versa. How does that work, or what are the capabilities there?
So that's gonna be a flow for the technical creators, the thing that you bring up, and that where you can export the entire scene out
Hmm.
into Unity, Unreal, and we'll see if something else is on the scene at that point. So that's going to be a pretty fluid workflow where you can directly export the entire thing in the specific format. So no file conversion or format conversion will be required. That will be early, likely in the first quarter of next year, where you'll have that
Hmm.
flow that you'll be able to export.
Cool. And once people bring it into Unity, then they can bring it into export into their metaverse, or like being able to provide metaverse experiences based on these experiences created inside Opus and have that direct kind of line, which I think is really interesting. And well, I think last year in August, I heard that there were 19,000 metaverses. There has to be like almost 50,000 by now, which I think will just create more efficient abilities to create more metaverses and environments in general, and really help to streamline quicker games and people creating their own games and things like that, especially in Unity, and in general. So I know that we're dealing with AI here. How have you navigated, or have you had to navigate any ethical dilemmas in your business? Any principles that have guided your decision making at all? Because I know that it's it's AI and people just don't know where stuff comes from, but it's all stuff being created by your team or other people, going to be selling their pieces, so that they're actual models not being created by AI, but being brought in and chosen from this gallery of models. But everything that you've created is your team created, right?
Right. So we've been very careful about how we're doing it, as in that we're not scraping the web, we're not taking asset from a public, I would say, marketplace or anything and using it. If we do, then we pay for it. But in most cases, we're creating our own, every asset and everything that you see, either created or paid for in the uh, in the tool now. And that's where we want to stay in terms of, we don't want to, let's say, train a model um, based on assets or graphics that is not, we didn't buy it for specifically for that particular purpose. And that, we're going to stay in that side, because at the end of the day we want to empower people, we don't want to replace them, right? As in, like, there's a narrative around that, oh, it's going to replace these people. I don't think that's going to happen. I
Yeah.
think people are great, people do amazing stuff, and at the same time, if you empower them, they'll be able to do a lot more. And the only way it can happen is that if you build that trust, right? That they trust that what you're doing is ethical and you're not violating their rights, and vice versa. So
Right.
that's how we're navigating it.
And I think that's great. Like you're going about it with your own created data sets instead of harnessing data sets that are existing outside of your own ecosystem. And then bringing in pay models or upload models, for everything else that can be generated utilizing text, but there are, rules or regulations or copyright and IP protections attached to that, which is going about it the right way. And you're setting a really great example. I had listened to another, excuse me, I had listened to another podcast of yours the other day, and there was something that you said about voice IP. Was there anything that you could share about that so I could understand more about what that was?
Um, so I mean, that's going to be a different, but let's talk about it a little bit, right? So what I imagine is that, let's say, um, being a so doing any being good at anything requires a lot of work, a lot of effort, and I know, of course, in engineering you need a lot of skill set and a lot of practice to do that. But let's say that you're an actor, right? And
Mm,
let's come up with something. Let's say Robert De Niro, right? So Robert De Niro, if you look at his earlier movies, he's a different person than he's in the later movie. And at a certain point, he almost built a particular persona around the behavior, the body movements, the kind of visual expression, the camera angle, everything is very proprietary to how Robert De Niro shows up in the movies, right? And that to
yeah.
me is almost like an intellectual property. It's almost like a IP. So let's think about the post AI world where AI can pretty much replicate everything, right? Now, where do people, and let me go back a little bit. AI is not going to be able to come up with original IP. It's not going to happen, right? We have to, AI in our world or in our is an enabler. It's not a replacer, which means that, let's say that you're an actress or you're an actor or you're a voice artist, something like that, right? It takes a lot of practice, a lot of effort, a lot of repetition, but at the same time, a lot of performance to get to from where you start to where you're at, like, actual professional. At that point, you almost
Mhm.
have developed an intellectual property around your style. Now, what AI can really do well is turn that intellectual property into a model. So let's say if you're a voice actor, you can take that um, and train a model around your intellectual property. Now that model is specific to your performance, how you do it, right? So let's say, I don't know, like, you have a model that does your voice over really well. Now that can be available on open marketplace. People can use it, apply it to a virtual actress or virtual actor, and get the exact result that they would get if they were to literally come to you and put you in a studio and get that voiceover done from you. Now, in this particular case, you're not doing any physical labor. You're not actually have to engage with the people. At the same time, it is your intellectual property, and you will get royalties out of that, right? Now, imagine like almost like your digital likeness. Similarly, like, in terms of your motions, like, your, let's say, patented motions, like, your body likeness, all these things can become intellectual property that can be applied. So that's what I was discussing, that it is going to be a marketplace where um, you can sell your likeness, you can sell your voiceover, you can sell your in terms of that other people will be able to use for things. And of course, you can always set parameters of how far you want to go, right? So let's say that your voiceover cannot be used in, let's say, adult entertainment, or cannot be used for religious or whatever else parameters you want to put there,
Yeah.
right? But you get paid sitting at, like, sitting at home, just because you did all that effort building up that persona in the past.
Wow, I think that that is really cool. And I've done some voiceover stuff, but I didn't know about the voiceover like IP and how it, the characters need voices, and there's going to be a big need for that narration because not everybody sees their voice as that character. They're imagining this voice and being able to have that slew of voiceover characters that can be utilized. That's really cool. And I didn't even think about that as part of Opus. And I'd love to have a short demo that I can share with the community here when they go and watch this on YouTube. So if you're listening right now, head over to our YouTube channel. It is in the description of this podcast, so you can see this demo. And at the bottom, you can present. It should have like a little present button, I believe.
Hold on. All right, let's see. Okay, is it visible now or no? Not yet.
No.
Okay, let me try again. For some reason, it's okay. Uh, Give me a second. Okay, what about now?
Let me add the stream in. Yeah,
Okay,
great.
awesome. All right, so let's dive into it. As I always say, this is for a non-technical creator, like, tool for non-technical creator. The way that I think works is that you just type stuff. That's why it's so simple, right? Just have projects and a bunch of templates.
Nice.
Let's see. All right, let's start with something simple. Let's say, all right, it's gonna take a few seconds. All right, so we got our okay. Let's try to change it a little bit. Summer day. So we get some. So now you can see the rain, and you can see that it's kind of like burned out grass. Let's see.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
uh,
It looks like there's like wind going through the grass too.
yeah,
Love that.
yeah. So I mean, it's literally, and we'll do it in a little bit, but
Wow.
we got our tree. Let's say the was, this one, it may take a little bit to build, but there we go. The elephant is in the back. So we'll dive into the scene now, so we can see what's going on. So there's a rain going on, and there's an elephant in the back, and we got our acacia tree right here. And let's try to change the hilly a little bit. So let's make it speed before we in a very hilly area. Right, so it's gonna go all crazy if we do very. All right, so now it's like all steep and, almost like crazy ridges.
Yeah.
And our elephant is somewhere down there on a very steep, like not a very natural place for an elephant to be. But let's change it. We'll make it slightly hilly area, and now we got slightly less. Okay, so we got our elephant, we got our tree, and we got this, right? So let's remove the rainy. We're gonna make it, let's say, cloudy summer day. That area, there was an acacia tree, there was an elephant. Let's add something here. Let's say there was a girl. She was wearing a blue dress. And let's give it a second. And there it is. She's wearing a blue dress. And I guess the lighting is messing with her, so we can't see her properly. So I'm going to remove the cloudy for now, so we can see like in a broad daylight. Let's make it evening. The evening is going to bring the sun on this side, so we'll be able to see her much more clearly. So there we go.
Wow.
Let's see. She had. Um, let's make it green eyes and dark hair. Let's make it red here. And red. She got, and
Cool.
let's change her dress to match her here. Okay, there we go. All right.
Wow.
Let's say she ran behind the tree. All right. So now she's just gonna run and she's just gonna stay there. Let's move slightly back so we can observe her.
Wow.
Really? Let's see.
Oh, I love being able to see the camera too.
Yeah, the
That's great.
camera. So the camera that you see in front is the starting point. So it's telling you where
Got
the
it.
scene starts from, and I can switch that it always. But let's do this. So she ran behind the tree and she right there, right? Let's change the elephant to I don't know, cat, and we're gonna do something more. So we got a cat right in the back,
Cute.
and she's just gonna lie down, and we'll do something else in a bit. Okay, so instead of the tree, let's make her go towards the cat. All right, so she's just running towards the cat. Let's
As you would definitely go toward the camera.
okay, yeah, definitely. Why would she go to the tree than the
Yeah.
cat? That's not.
And then every time you start to type again, it goes back to the beginning of the scene.
Yeah, it's a story that you're building. So your narration, right? So when you go into the, so if you can see on my mouse cursor, like when you go to the play mode, which is basically it's gonna
Yeah.
start playing the story from the beginning, and that's
Got
what
it.
it's doing. uh, and you can record your camera angles and almost like play it back or make a video out of it, right? But yeah, all right,
Well,
so we'll stop here for now.
love that.
Awesome. All right, stop screen. Okay.
That's great. I love where that is going. Like the just being able to have these demos is amazing. And this is just the beginning of what you're creating and bringing out to the world. And I'm really excited to see every single iteration that you put out. And we remember where video games were 20 years ago, and look where they are now. And being able to have something so real life and so aidful and narration and story and explanation, I think is going to be really fun and brilliant. And I really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you so much for spending this hour and a half with me. I know you're a busy, busy person. You have really provided me some amazing information, and so our listeners and viewers as well. I'm really excited to upload this podcast. It needs very little editing. Everything went really, really smooth, and the demo is just fantastic. So I'm excited to share it on LinkedIn and all our socials as well. Yeah, follow Adnan on LinkedIn, follow OpusAI. I'm excited for everything to come your way, and I love every time that I see a demo shared on my socials, and seeing more of you out there in the world. So congratulations on everything.
Thank you so much, Elise, for kind words, and really excited to do this with you, and definitely excited about the future where we're heading, and for all
Yeah,
of us, not just for us, but I think it's going to be a very personal experience for most of us who feel very strongly at this point about this, because we're almost the owner of the world that is being built. So
yeah.
yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
You're an amazing human being, and so is your wife. Happy that you have amazing support and you're working together on this amazing venture. Thank you so much, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.